I've seen a fair few videos by other creators giving their lists of life-changing books, but rarely do you ever see anyone talk about truly transforming and life-changing audiobooks. Now, I know a lot of books nowadays are available with their audio counterparts, but people who learn best through listening like me sometimes get let down when we find out a particular book doesn't have an audio version, or even worse, we get the dreaded, "This title isn't available in your country." So this is my list of 5 life-changing audiobooks that are definitely available here in the UK and I'm pretty sure most other countries. And each one has either partly or entirely transformed my perspective and the way I interact with the world. What's up everyone, it's Alex here at Conscious Personal Growth, where we share strategies for personal transformation. So let's get straight to it, starting with PsychoCybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Now, right off the bat, this is a bit of an oddball one. There's a claim that goes around in pop psychology and self-improvement circles, and you might have heard it, that apparently it takes 21 days to form a new habit. Well, that claim actually originated from this book, but not quite in the way Maxwell intended. Maltz was a plastic surgeon in the 1950s performing cosmetic alterations and observed that it took his patients a minimum of 21 days to adjust to the look of their new face, and that 21 days was about the time a patient's sensation of a phantom limb would persist after an amputation. From this, he concluded, it takes a minimum of 21 days for an old self-image to dissolve and a new one to gel. Now, we don't know how accurate his conclusions were and how closely self-image corresponds with habits, but either way, the people who picked up the saying forgot about the "a minimum of" bit and ran with 21 days to form a new habit, and the meme has since spread everywhere. It turns out the truth is closer to 18 to 254 days to form a new habit. Researchers at UCL ran a study where, amongst nearly 100 participants, the number of days to form a new habit varied massively, with an average of 66 days. Either way, Maltz was more interested in self-image than habits per se. Whilst he would change people's faces through plastic surgery, he noticed that with some patients, although he had changed their self-image on the outside, on the inside, they still weren't happy. On the inside, they still had a lot of negative feelings and beliefs about themselves. He wanted to help these patients in another way and assembled a series of strategies to help people to gain a positive self-image and start to believe in their own potential and ultimately end up successful. And his stories and strategies were published in this book for us all to use. Now, I wouldn't say the book is super scientific to today's standards, and it's certainly not peer-reviewed, but it's still a brilliant book for personal growth nonetheless. It includes a whole host of useful visualization techniques and success strategies that have influenced so much of the personal development world today. In fact, the likes of Tony Robbins and Brian Tracy base a lot of their techniques on Maltz's work and this book, and a lot of the psychological methods behind training elite-level athletes are based in psychocybernetics as well. And it's all round just a very motivating book that can propel you to change your beliefs around what's possible and have you visualizing your way to success. The second book that had a huge impact on my life is actually the first personal growth book that I ever read, and it's the hugely popular How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Now, if you've ever been into any self-help section in any bookstore, then yes, you'll probably have seen this book. Over 15 million copies have been sold, so it's not exactly a big secret, but if you haven't read it, or in this case, listened to it, then I highly recommend you listen to it. There's a reason why it's sold so many copies, because the concepts are so timeless and so fundamental to successful human communication. I remember when I first read it, and quite frankly, my ego took a bit of a bashing. It's easy to shy away from self-help under the guise that it's all a ruse, but it takes a little courage to read a book like this and admit to yourself where you've been going wrong in your interactions. it's slightly easy to feel embarrassed because we want to feel like we so obviously know and act out these fundamental rules for getting the best responses from people. But the truth is, we don't. We forget to listen. We forget to be truly interested in the other person and praise people on a regular basis. This book serves as an indispensable reminder about all the things that helps us to lead others, execute effective business deals, and just generally get on with people. The third book on this list is High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard. Now, I've already included one super obvious and seminal self-help book, so I'm not going to include Think and Grow Rich, but I almost feel like this could be a follow-up. The introduction in Think and Grow Rich indicates that at some point whilst reading the book, you might get a sudden light bulb moment, a sudden flash of inspiration where you suddenly see the keys that open the doors to success, and many people do. There's this moment that many people have where you suddenly start to see how it all fits together, and I felt the same way about High Performance Habits too. The book lays out 6 habits that work together to create results for the world's highest performers, like business leaders and elite athletes. And near the end of the book, I felt this spark where it suddenly all seemed to make sense again. I could just see so clearly how the combinations of proper habits and attitudes leads to so much productivity and drive. And what's better is that Brendan based these habits on in-depth research that him and his team did with some of the world's best. There's common success strategies that get peddled in self-help circles a lot, but he wanted to find out, based on research, which ones are actually true, and ended up with 6 high-performance habits that may change your life. The fourth audiobook that changed my life, probably the most out of any audiobook or any book at all, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Now, I had been into philosophies influenced by Zen Buddhism and Hinduism and Indian sages for a long time before I got to this one. And I must admit, when I first heard of Eckhart and watched a few of his YouTube videos, I had my reservations and I judged him too quickly. I don't think I was in the right place to hear his message, and it seemed a bit vague and new agey for me at the time, but boy, was I wrong. A friend recommended I read it, and I was like, now I get it. Now I really get it. I mean, I had done a lot of listening to Alan Watts, and I'd resonated with so many of his philosophies. It gave me a completely new perspective on the universe and my own existence, but I didn't quite get just how much these shifts in perspective can completely end so much suffering. I was suffering at the time, and I listened to it about 10 times back to back just to get it to really sink in. And not only did I transcend my suffering, but I awakened to so much at the same time. And I think it's because how practical and simple the book really is. You see, the core teaching isn't new at all, but so much of the other literature around transcending suffering and awakening is archaic or poetic or just not as accessible. The Power of Now has been written in plain and practical English, and it's easy to understand. There's some slightly spiritual tones to it with some references to religion, but even if you're a flat-out atheist, you could open up to it by seeing it from a purely psychological standpoint to begin with. And if you're ready for the teaching, it could prompt perhaps the most important shift in awareness that you'll ever have. And finally, we end up with a double whammy. I lied. Officially, it's a list of 6 life-changing audiobooks, but I've included these 2 together because personally, I believe they should be read pretty much back to back, or at least one after the other. And they are The 4 Agreements and The 5th Agreement by Don Miguel Ruiz. The Toltec were an ancient Mesoamerican culture that influenced a long tradition of indigenous beliefs in Mexico, and Don draws from these ancient wisdom and combines it with modern insights to describe 4 practical agreements to approach life with. These simple but effective philosophies, once you live them in your life, have the power to transform your world. They're as simple as Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. But you really do have to listen to the book to get a full explanation and begin the process of really integrating them. I feel like the 4 agreements serve as useful symbols to navigate life with, but the 5th agreement is on another level up completely. Once you've integrated the new symbols, the 5th agreement teaches us how to transcend symbols altogether, how to see through our own mind-made dreams and illusions. It's ancient wisdom fused with modern insights that points to the same thing that the power of now points to, and Indian sages throughout time have pointed to, and Buddhism and Hinduism and what perhaps nearly all spiritual traditions at their very roots have pointed to before being clouded up with beliefs and ideology. It's these books that push for a complete shift in your awareness that are truly groundbreaking for me, and at the heart of what I'm doing with my life's work in this channel. So if you want to check out more from me, go ahead and click the next video coming up on the end screen. But with that being said, I really hope you enjoyed this list of life-changing books. So hit that like button if you liked it, and of course, don't forget to subscribe for more videos helping you with conscious personal growth.